What up, Raffleaters? Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to bring you a slice of Subryanville. This is Sheriff Street. Sheriff Street runs the length of the city from north to south up to the Botanical Gardens, and Subryanville is this triangle of property west of Sheriff Street. So it's a triangle because its boundaries are Rupert Craig Highway, Sheriff Street and David Street Kitty, coming to an end at Public Road Kitty. So on the opposite side of Sheriff Street is this neighborhood. It's called Bel Air Gardens, and Bel Air Gardens I think goes all the way to, was it Bel Air Springs and then Lilindale. But I want to show you what property has been constructed here in Subryanville. Now, during the 90s, somebody put up this large structure. I call it a monstrosity, but I guess it was mimicked from South Asian architecture. Probably somebody trying to get something looking like Taj Mahal or old Indian architecture. Depends on your taste. If you like it. Behind that is another building, newer, and we're going to try and take a look at some of these buildings. And then there are a couple of large buildings all the way over by Public Road Kitty. That's at the border of Subryanville. Somebody put up a tower here, and then there's the Russian embassy, which is also at the apex of the triangle. So let's take a look at Subryanville, at some of the properties that have been constructed in Subryanville over the last decade or so. In the beginning, meaning back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, this was a affluent neighborhood, but people didn't think of building tall buildings, and affluent people who lived here built large buildings, large houses, but they tended to be flat two-story houses like the ones we're coming up on here. And they were occupied by, captains of industry, CEOs and ministers of the government and so on. So these houses with the red roof, the brown roof and the green roof, these were the affluent houses in the 70s and the 1980s. Now somebody, I think in the last couple of years or so, has been renovating them, at least painting them again on the outside to make them, to spruce them up, make them look new. So for example, this one has been renovated on the outside, and so is the one next door. But back in the 80s and 90s, in fact 70s and the 80s, these were the houses that were prime property in Georgetown. They were, they had a view of the Atlantic Ocean. Out here is the Atlantic Ocean. And so these houses at the north end of Subryanville, north side of Subryanville, were like your oceanfront property. Right, this is the equivalent of oceanfront property in Georgetown. And from this point all the way up the coast, the houses that are located south of this highway our oceanfront property until you get to the point where the highway veers inland. But some new houses have been built in the last couple of years or so. Here is one. It's new condominium, and next to it there's an inn, a small hotel. We want to take a look at some of those houses. There's this one that's it's almost completed now. We're going to take a look at that one too. In the last year or so, that one is closer and closer to completion. So let's take a look at Subryanville. First, let's take a look at this street. It's a short street between this point and Sheriff Street. This house used to be this one on the left, that is on the north side, used to be a university. Somebody had rented it out to be a private university, but I think the lease is up on that and it's kind of reversed to what it is now, a residential home. This says 21, Century 21. I guess that's the home of Century 21 here in Guyana. This is Amazon Caribbean Guyana Limited, CEF. This one is new construction, residential home I suppose, or condominium. This one is, I think, also new, 3 stories and residential. And that one is also well renovated, if not new. And then there's the one at the corner intersection here that's been built, I think, about 5 or so years ago. I remember them building this house on the way back. So this one is also renovated. Right, so Subryanville was a quiet and residential neighborhood. And now apparently there are a lot of commercial establishments being run from these homes. So people have sort of turned their property, their homes, into commercial, but are running their businesses out of their homes. This one, I think, is an apartment building now. Right, so somebody built an apartment building here. We're right at the corner of Century 21 for rent. So yes, right at the corner here there's a lot 1 Sheriff Street and First Avenue, Subryanville. The sign says this one is a residential apartment. It's been built in the last 5 years or so. I think I was here seeing this one on the construction. Now we're going to look at the back side of that Taj Mahal looking building. Alright, so the idea here, I guess, behind going taller is so that you get a better view of the Atlantic Ocean. Right, so all this is oceanfront property, but like I said earlier, in the 60s and 70s when they were built, these properties were not necessarily built for a view, or it's not really built to be homes with a view. At least they didn't need to go up high. I suppose the highway wasn't even built then, Rupert Craig Highway. But now, of course, people are building taller, so this is a taller structure that's meant to take advantage of the view, the ocean view. So I guess from the roof, this roof deck, you'll be able to look out over the Atlantic Ocean. This is the second tier of houses. This one recently built. Doesn't seem to have a roof deck, but I think it has a flat roof and could possibly be eventually used in the same way as a deck. Right, so we saw those two new houses, and like I said, this is the French consulate here, the blue, I suppose the sign says, and some of these homes have commercial establishments inside as well. I mean, they're dual purpose. First Street in Subryanville. Now we're going to take a look at 2nd Street, and there's some interesting developments happening in the 2nd Street. So these were the original affluent homes in Subryanville. One here at this intersection. These were the original, the initial oceanfront property, and they always looked good from the highway. When you pass, you'd see the lawns. This is a hotel. It's called the Atlantic Inn. Right, Atlantic Inn here, close to the ocean, Lot 56, and this building is new. This is a new, don't know if it's a single family home or a condominium, but it's new construction. It's been built in the last 2 years or so. I've actually seen it being constructed here in 2nd Street, Subryanville. Somebody said they wanted to see on the inside. Don't know if I'll get permission to take a look on the inside. I don't know if it's occupied already.
Distance 5 miles. Duration 1 hour 55 minutes 2 seconds. Pace 22 minutes 3 seconds per mile. 808 kilocalories burned.
So yes, this is 2nd Street, and this is a new, fairly new actually, residential property based on the meter. So there is a single electrical meter. Based on the meter, it seems as if it's a single unit, because like we saw the last time on the East Coast, that condominium had 9 meters on the outside, electric meters. This was what the original colonial architecture looks like, right? Back in the 60s and the 70s, when you were building a big home here in Subryanville, that is what it looked like based on Old English architecture. And this is what back in the 60s and 70s. Morning. This is what an affluent home looked like back in the 1960s and 70s. And bearing in mind that this neighborhood, Subryanville, was in fact an affluent neighborhood, one of the residential neighborhoods. But now people have come back and are returning to build larger homes. And now the standard is to build, covering the entire lot, 4,000 square feet and more, houses with larger footprints and larger volume. Subryanville. Morning. And of course, to combine your business with your residence, you need more space, more like space for office space, and you need residential space. Morning. So this is in fact what the new Subryanville looks like. New Subryanville being the sort of new houses that have been built in the last 5 years or so. People who've returned from living abroad and have come back to settle down to retire and are now building larger homes. This one, for example, is still under construction, almost completed. That's a new home somebody is building. See, the back fence is still boarded up, hasn't been completed yet. And you know, the rest of it is homes that are prime real estate because of the location and likely to be eventually renovated to look like the newer homes. Now this one has a number of air conditions in the back, so that could also be a condominium. This new home in the corner of 2nd Street, this one I think is, now that I see it more closely, blue and red and white, off-white, is a single family home that was redesigned, rebuilt, I think in the last 12 months or so, because I observed this. Right, I kind of observed this building being constructed over the last year. And this large piece of property, well, this has been around for a while, has always been a residential home, but you can see what is unusual about it is that it's in the city, it's in the boundaries of the city, but it occupies much more land than normal, than is typical. So this is kind of unusual to have a home that is spread over like 4 or 5 typical city lots. This is Subryanville in Georgetown. Now, a lot of these houses have been renovated to look like they, in terms of size, like they did in the 60s and 70s when they were built, but basically revised or spruced up, or in a superficial way renovated, updated, basically updated. But then there's others like these that have been really built larger and now occupy much more space, volume. Morning. These guys are building a sidewalk. So this, in fact, so large it might be some kind of a hotel. So large that it could be a hotel. But this is what the original home looks like. This is the size of the original home, and eventually all of these homes, I suppose, are going to get renovated. That's a tower you see from the Atlantic Ocean. Somebody had the idea of putting a tower and observation deck. The Sigma engineers are here, so again, another house with offices for a firm. And then across the way, that's the Russian embassy in Guyana. This was built in the 1990s, I think, around 1992. And that's Public Road Kitty. Now this building behind is also in Subryanville, and it's kind of recently been constructed. I think it's almost complete. We'll take a closer look at it from the other side. So let's continue towards 3rd Street in Subryanville. So we're not going to cover the whole neighborhood today. Just wanted to show you what is changing here, how the new homes are replacing older homes. This one, for example, is one at the corner here of 2nd Street. It's new architecture. with an interesting orientation on the lot. And this one is also renovated. That one, like I said, this is one of the larger homes in the neighborhood. It's been around for more than a few decades. This one, of course, is also new. Well, not new, old in terms of they've occupied that lot for a long time, but renovated. 3rd Street. So go down here. I think this is the street. At the end of this street, or close to the middle of this street, there is the maze on the 12th school, right? There's a primary school down there. I'm not going to go put the students on camera. But over on this side, this street runs into Public Road Kitty at the end. And I think the next 2 streets take you to the boundary of Subryanville. I don't know who the people are that live in this neighborhood, but I know that a lot of affluent families have lived in this neighborhood for generations. And so property here is usually, been in the family for 50 or 60 or 70 years. This is a new renovated property on 3rd Street, very well concealed by vegetation, hedges and palm trees. These are also renovated, but in the style of the original property. So these houses were built. Morning. You work here? Okay. This is 3rd Street. And like I said, some of these properties have been in the families that have lived here for generations, and some of them have been redesigned and restyled. Some of them have been renovated and become rentals for foreign diplomats and local politicians and merchants and so on. This one is also being renovated. The one in the background is the one that has been visible from the road. So this is a original house that has been kept in its original style, now being renovated. But to show you the new multi-story building that is being built here in Subryanville, bring this video to an end, is this building. It's kind of residential. Looks like it could be a residential building with multiple units. So let's see how many stories. 1, 2, 3, 4, and a roof. So about 5 floors and a roof deck. And it's been in construction for the last 12 months or so. It's still being completed. You can see the balconies have been put in recently, and outside has been finished. This one next door is also being renovated, expanded. This, I think, is the boundaries of Subryanville, Lamaha Street. This street actually goes all the way south. If you follow it south, ends up in Bel Air Park. But this, guys, this is Subryanville, the neighborhood of Subryanville in Georgetown, and it's one of the older and more affluent neighborhoods. It's also preferred neighborhood for families of expats and diplomats because it's close to the city center and the business center, the government center in Guyana, so in Georgetown. So a lot of these homes have been renovated specifically to become rental property for diplomats coming to Guyana. I think last time I was passing through this neighborhood, this home at the corner, this intersection is being constructed. And there's a large home also that was constructed here since the last time I was here. This home straight ahead has been here on this circle of land for decades, but this is a new condominium that has been built in the last 5 years or so. And these are all original homes in Subryanville. One of the suburbs, right? Because there was a time when Georgetown was so tiny that this was considered the outskirts. Because think of how far this was away from, it's about a mile or two away from the government buildings downtown. Alright, so this is the boundaries, the southern boundaries of Subryanville in Georgetown, one of the oldest residential neighborhoods. And it comes to, as we come upon the boundary here, comes to an end here on David Street, Kitty. Right, this is a colonial building that's occupied that location for a long time. We still have lots of dogs in the city. They're free to roam. So that's it, guys. That's Subryanville in Georgetown, Guyana. If you want to see more content like this, click like and subscribe. Tell me what you think about this older neighborhood in Subryanville and all the new things that have been happening here, all the new buildings that are being built and renovated. And I'll show you more of these neighborhoods in the next video. Remember, I have a number of other 10 channels in total, and you can see all of my videos if you subscribe to all of my channels. As you approach David Street, Kitty, the boundaries of Subryanville, and Lamaha Street we were walking on. Share this video with friends and family. Let people know what's happening here in Georgetown, Guyana. Later!